I think one of the running themes with all these Marvel Netflix shows, maybe with an exception to Daredevil, is that they all seem to have a running theme of people with powers not wanting to be superheroes or not wanting to be superpowered beings or known as them at the very least. I think Jessica Jones exemplifies that and does that the best out of all of them. It's the one Marvel Netflix show that doesn't feel in any way like a comic book TV show adaptation or a superhero show or a superhero movie by any means. And that's really because the comic was based off of Alias or Jessica Jones or AKA Alias Jessica Jones, whatever it was called, was not a superhero comic book. Marvel at the time, I think, created the Max imprint, which was basically a new imprint that was still under Marvel, like a subsidiary of Marvel, that just allowed certain comic books and certain storylines to tell more graphic, more violent, and more suggestive material. And Jessica Jones, I'm pretty sure, pioneered that at that time. Jessica Jones, both the show and the character in the comic books, is not a person trying to be a superhero or a person trying to better herself or her city or make anything better than what it originally was. She's none of that stuff. She really is the only one of these Marvel Netflix shows or one of these members of the Defenders that is set apart from all the rest. Just as a character, she's probably the most interesting that we've seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far, and that goes with some of the villains that we've seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. She's still just as interesting as the Kingpin in Daredevil Season 1, and just as interesting, if not more, than the villain in this show. She's a rape victim, which is a topic that is brought up throughout the show, but it's never preachy about it. It's never brought up too much. They really just bring it up through the character and how she actually acts. She acts like how a victim does. They subtly hint at it, and they subtly throw it out there, and you get the lasting effects of what happened to Jessica Jones. That's not a topic that you expect to be brought up in anything comic book related or Marvel comic book related. You gotta remember, this is the same universe that has a talking fucking raccoon and a talking tree and Avengers and all that shit. You don't expect this shit to be brought up, but they deal with it respectfully. It's brought up at the right moments where it is warranted, and they never go too overboard with it. Now, I've never seen, anything really with David Tennant in it. I've never seen Doctor Who or anything of the like, but I can just tell you right now, him as Kilgrave, as the Purple Man, he is just as scary as he is charmingly awesome and charismatic. Every scene with Kilgrave in it is immediately more interesting, immediately more entertaining, and you're just glued to the screen. You want to hear everything that he has to say. You want to see everything that he's going to do. And that's not to say that every other scene without him is horrible, it's bad. Just that every scene with him in it, it enhances your experience. It really makes the show better, and he really does make the show for me and honestly for a lot of people. His color purple, they really do utilize well for the show. Anytime I think about this show, I think of purple, and that's honestly what I think they've done best with all these Marvel Netflix shows. Each individual character color I immediately think of whenever I think of any of the individual Defender shows. I think of Daredevil, I think of red, Jessica Jones, like I said, purple, Luke Cage, yellow, and when I think of Iron Fist, I think green. Because that show is just like green baby shit. It smells and stinks. They utilize the color purple well in the show because it is literally everywhere. A wall might be purple, a light might be purple, someone might be wearing a purple shirt. It really is emphasized that Kilgrave can be anywhere. He really can be controlling anyone at any time. At a certain point during the show, you feel really bad for him because, as he puts it in the show, he doesn't really know if people are doing the things that he says because they want to do it or because that's just what he's telling them to do. This is where his conflict with Jessica comes into, because this is the first and only woman that he's ever had to fight for, and that he's ever actually seen any reason not to use his powers on. That's why he's so fixated with her. Now, that's not to say that he's the only villain in the show, but it is easy for me to say that he's the only good villain in the show. They have some other villain in this show, Nuke or Frank Simpson or whoever the hell his name is. And I know that he is a character from the Daredevil comic books. He was actually introduced in the Born Again storyline, the best Daredevil storyline. But he just felt, to me at least, very useless, very annoying. And they did a total 180 of his character from the beginning of the show to what he actually turns out to be and what he ends up being at the end of the show. He gets mind controlled by Kilgrave towards the beginning of the show, and then Jessica saves him. And then throughout the whole rest of the show, he's just fixated on killing Kilgrave, and they can't kill Kilgrave because they need him to stand trial for a whole nother subplot, And it just is really annoying because you're just wondering, why is this guy around? He serves no real purpose in the plot. He kind of just screws over a lot of characters and gets them into even deeper shit than they were before. I feel like they just kept him around because it's Nuke and they might just save him for maybe another season of Daredevil, maybe season 3 if they do the Born Again story, or maybe for some other Marvel Netflix show. And it kind of annoys me because he's yet to show up in any of the other Marvel Netflix shows. It's yet to be determined or announced if he's going to be in the Defenders, so I have no idea why he was introduced in this show, especially when he's originally a Daredevil character. He really just served no purpose in the plot whatsoever. That's kind of my problem. One of my only problems really with this whole first season and as a whole is that a lot of the side characters just feel very useless, or they just don't really do anything for me. Trish Walker is one thing. I mean, you kind of need to have that friend for Jessica Jones to work off of. But they introduced this subplot or this one character detail of her taking up karate or her taking up taekwondo or whatever. And I get it, she's Hellcat from the comic books. I've never read a Hellcat comic in my life, so I don't really know or care. But they never do anything with this at all. I figured, oh, they're going to introduce it because they would have her, you know, maybe fight one of Kilgrave's guys or whatever. Maybe fight Kilgrave himself or something like that, or protect herself. But almost every scene she's in, she's getting kidnapped or knocked unconscious or just made to look like a fool. I don't know if they'll introduce her as Hellcat sometime down the line. I don't know. But it's a detail I thought just went completely unnoticed throughout the course of the rest of the show. And there's this whole subplot with the character Malcolm, and he's a good side character. He's a good side character. He's one of the very few side characters I actually really like in this show, and he actually does have a very good arc throughout the course of the show. But he has this subplot with one of Jessica Jones's annoying ass neighbors, easily the most annoying character in this whole show, the character Robin. Just every scene that she's on, she's just a nosy, annoying bitch. And again, she's one of the characters who just kind of gets the characters, the main characters at least, into even deeper shit than they were before. And it's not like, oh, well, they'll have an arc with her throughout the course of the show where she's a bitch in the beginning, and then she actually turns to be kind of an okay person in the end. No, she's just a bitch throughout the whole course of the season, and then they kind of just forget about her towards the end. I thought they would have like a bigger thing going on with her, or at the very least you'd see like Kilgrave like just murder her horribly and sort of get her comeuppance or whatever. But no, they do nothing with her character. It's just annoying to sit there because she's just such a bitch throughout the whole show. I'll get into Luke Cage more when I do the actual Luke Cage series review, or season 1 review. But he was very good in this season. I thought it was good. I thought it was a nice added addition to the cast. I didn't feel like they were just setting up for his show. He is actually a very integral part of Jessica Jones' history. They get married at one point, have a kid. So I felt like he was very needed in the show, and it is interesting where their relationship ends up in the show. And I'm hoping that it will lead to some very funny, or at least very interesting interactions when the Defenders inevitably comes out. Also, the last episode of the whole season feels very, very abrupt. I don't want to say how it ends, but it ends very disappointingly, especially for a certain character I talked about in this video. Just a very abrupt ending to that character. It is a very, very just weird way the whole thing ends. But just overall, as the show stands, it's still a very solid show in my opinion. I think it does a lot of stuff that a lot of comic book series have not yet touched on, or really have not had the guts to touch on yet, and I think it does that perfectly in the show. Doesn't go too overboard with anything, just does exactly the right amount that it needs to, where it serves the story and its characters properly. In my opinion, it's the most personal and most simple out of all of these Marvel Netflix shows. Like Daredevil, it's a guy trying to save, you know, not the whole city, but like a certain part of the city. Same thing with Luke Cage, and same thing with Iron Fist to a certain extent. We'll get to that later. But this is just a chick, just a woman trying to go after the guy that wronged her. Simple. And it sticks to that perfectly. It doesn't try to go too bigger than that. In terms of story and character, I want to say that this is my favorite on a technical level. Like, if you really had to twist my arm and say which one is technically a better show, this one. Daredevil is more of my guilty pleasure favorite. I think there's just more in that just entertains me. But just from a storytelling standpoint, Jessica Jones, I think, is the strongest out of all these Marvel Netflix shows. You know, spoiler for all the other ones. But no, if you really are not sure about these Marvel Netflix shows, or you're not really sure about superhero comic books adaptations as a whole, just watch Jessica Jones. If you're not into that stuff, then this will get you. I mean, I even showed the show to my mom, who's not a fan of comic book TV shows or movies or any of that stuff, and she loved it. And she's eagerly waiting season 2. So if that doesn't say anything, I don't know what does. So just go watch Jessica Jones, and I can't wait for season 2.